if people have any kind of sensitivity to gluten, I'll recommend them to go gluten-free. But the healthiest bread I can think of is really sprouted grain bread. Just contains less of the problematic compounds and up to 10 times more vitamins, minerals, and less of those phytic acid and anti-nutrients that some people are fearful of, or that just reduce the nutrient content of the bread. So that's probably, and I mean, people were doing it back before Jesus, the sprouting thing, preparing bread. It's really the traditional way, either that or sourdough and breads that are actually fermented, which probably does some of the same benefits.
So I wonder what kind of bread Jesus ate then. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know, but there's the Ezekiel bread brand that says that in the Bible they say like there's really a part they cite where it's like you take those grains, spelt, millet, and wheat or whatever, and you sprout them and then you make bread. So that's the traditional way to do it anyway.
Where do you fall with that, Joe? Are you completely like bread? No, or are you like lenient in?
I have no idea what Jesus ate.
No, I'm not talking about Jesus anymore. I'm talking about you. Like, where do you fall in the bread atmosphere?
You know, for me, yeah, I mean, if you don't have that gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity, obviously celiac disease, sprouted grain bread is going to be a better choice than white bread or wheat bread or even whole grain bread. The sprouted grain still has gluten in it. In fact, they add gluten to it. My understanding is that the sprouted stuff doesn't stick together quite as well, and so they actually add gluten to it. If you read the ingredients on Ezekiel bread, that brand in particular, I'm not sure about other brands, but the Ezekiel bread actually has wheat gluten as an ingredient. So it's still pretty gnarly stuff for people who have a sensitivity to gluten.
When I think about food, I always try to eat the most nutrient-dense foods possible. And
yeah, that's,
you know, so even though, you know, bread, some people may be able to handle it better, like the gluten sensitivity or whatnot. Even if I was able to handle it, which I can't because I do have a gluten sensitivity, I don't know if it's something that I would incorporate in my diet, only because I feel anything that I want to eat, I want it to be the most nutrient dense as possible. So I would go along. I would definitely skip that in favor of like a vegetable or something like that because of its nutrient density.
Yeah, let's dive.
Right.
We can dive into a little bit further because I think it'll be helpful for people. Because yeah, I mean, Eric, you bring up a really good point with nutrient density. I mean, you go from like, you know, probably organ meats and healthy fats and muscle meats and down the line, fruits, vegetables, things like that. And so if you're focusing on those super nutrient dense foods, by the time you get to any sort of grain, it's like so far down the list. You know, it's really just for an enjoyment factor. But I think what Nick is trying to do here is sort of be that skinny end of the wedge that gets people off of the, you know, what we call the standard American diet, or we call it the standard North American diet, of eating just you know, junk food and you know, white pasta and white bread and just really crappy food. That may be a step in the right direction. So I mean, so I can definitely appreciate that. But yes, from a nutrient density standpoint, it's so far down the list that I usually don't get to it unless it's just something that I want to enjoy, and you know, maybe I'll have some gluten free.
Totally.
The only other point that I want to make is that there's a sustainability aspect to this too that we could talk about. Whereas, you know, yeah, maybe it's healthier, but you're still talking about largely monoculture, you know, depleting the soils. You know, I don't know if it's organic or not, so we may or may not be talking about, you know, excess chemicals and pesticides and runoff and dead zones. I mean, so the list goes on and on. So there are a number of reasons to avoid it, but, you know, I think Nick's point in his ebook is that, you know, it's about baby steps, and let's at least start somewhere. So
right.
I think it's a good starting point. Yeah.